Today, we have an incredible guest that's teaching us all about how to prioritize and live a value led life that has way less chaos and much more peace. So stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest here with us, Tiffany Souter. She is a wife, mom, entrepreneur, board member, investor, podcast host of Life of And keynote speaker. For 20 years, she and her husband have been building their companies and their family on the exact same timeline. That means 4 kids, 3 businesses, and 2 careers, all building towards one abundant life. Today, Tiffany spends her time helping professional women move from a life of have to a life of want to. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kendra. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you got in this space and just a little outside of what we just shared.
Yeah, sure. I think for many of us that are in this content creation world, it oftentimes comes from a place where we're trying to teach maybe the thing that we wished we had or redeem some of the lessons that life taught us. And I think for me, both of those are true. I'm a firstborn daughter and I'm married to a firstborn. And the two of us are classically that. We're very high achieving. We're very focused. We talk a lot about competing and winning, which is mostly good, but sometimes can also be a lot of the same. I sometimes feel bad for our kids, our 4 daughters, and the therapy that they're going to need being raised by 2 high achieving people. So while that has served us very well, we also got to a place in about 2018 where all of the doing, all of the striving, all of the wanting, all of the creating, all of the winning, all of the pushing really came to a screeching halt. I started a business when I was 25 years old, a marketing agency, and it was growing really fast. We had 2 kids at the time, and my husband had a great big job, one that required him to travel a lot. So he was gone and home and gone and home. And so we just got to the place where just trying to be more prepared, trying to be a little bit more organized, trying to be on top of things a little bit more, which just did not give us the capacity to be able to live in our lives. We were just doing our lives. And so life crashed a bit. My business was going through a really hard time financially. Our relationship, our marriage was going through a really hard time. And we had some super tough conversations with one another about, do we go forward together or apart? We had these girls, like I said, 2 at the time that we were trying to figure out how to be present for, but they were very much being raised by our nanny. And no matter how early I woke up, I didn't have enough time for myself. And so when I laid in bed at night and thought about how to fix it, my mind first went to, what thing do I have to give up? And that is really the genesis of how I came up with this movement called the Life of And, is how do we architect our lives in such a way where we can have everything that we want, but we learn how to size it appropriately for the context it needs to sit in. We learn how to size it correctly so that our biggest priorities move forward and we move some things to the not now list or to the later list or to the never list. And that we get clear in our own priorities and values so that our own life is what's making our decisions and we get out of living an ego-fueled decision-making life. when I teach this, it's very much teaching it and learning it alongside the women that I'm speaking to, because I had to learn how to re-architect our lives. I'm very happy to say that my agency is doing very well, and we got that back on track. My husband and I just celebrated 20 years, and I have more life that I'm living today than I ever have, even though we have 4 girls and that too. It takes time to do it well, but that's my story and how I got to right here and what I teach and who I love to help.
Thank you for sharing. I love it when people talk about prioritizing and having it be value led because it is so hard. Like, I want to do all of the things, and it's sometimes hard to slow my roll a little bit and making sure that I'm like living in alignment with those values, especially so there's not other casualties in the process, like my marriage, like you talked about, or my kids, because it requires constant course correcting. So I'm glad that you are speaking to that. If you wouldn't mind, when we were talking earlier, we mentioned how you like to speak to the morning roundup and the evening one. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that and maybe how this ties into what you were just talking about?
Yeah, one of the underlying sort of fundamentals of the life of and what I teach is that if I look into my professional life, and this is really where I learned how to win in a lot of ways, is like every single month in my business life, I get a P&L that tells me whether we made money or we lost money. And in some ways, that's very helpful because it allows you to create course correction with really fast iterations. Every 30 days, you're getting a signal. And we don't have, in many ways, that same 30-day scorecard that shows up in our personal lives. Little things become medium things, become big things that start to create really big problems in our lives, in our personal life, because we don't have that same intensity on every single 30 days. How am I doing? Am I making money or losing money or gaining progress in my sense of adventure and my intimacy and my relationships? And so I have, in many ways, learned more from my business life that I've brought into my personal life. So one of my observations was that in my business life, there's 3 core roles that I have to run a business. And I'm oversimplifying this a bit, but one is it sets vision and culture. Where are we going to go and how are we going to get there? So vision and values. Where are we going to go and how are we going to get there? Second one is there's a COO. The COO operationally determines with the time and money we have available, how are we going to get there? In the context of where we're going and our values, how are we going to get there? That's what a COO does. And a CFO figures out, do we have the financial wherewithal to be able to do these things, right? Because the CFO might say we can't go quite that fast. We actually could go faster. What is it going to cost? Can we fund everything at the same time? And so those 3 hats, the CEO, where are we going to go and what are the values? The COO, what are we going to do to get there? And the CFO, can we afford it? Those same roles have to be present in our family lives if we want to live a life of intention and we want to have clear priorities, what we're going to do in life, and clear values, how we're going to do it. So in my family, and everybody's got their own version of this, my husband and I really share the CEO role. We both are setting intention around where we're going as a family and how we're going to get there from a values perspective. The COO role is very much mine to wear. And the CFO role he wears, and I like help from a bookkeeping perspective sometimes, but he's really in charge of our financial life. I'm in charge of our schedule and calendars, and together we make sure that we're all headed in the same direction. So even the naming of that was very helpful to me. Again, this is our family construct. Everybody has to have those roles defined. One of the things that can happen, and I talked about this a little bit too, is that can be very implicit. Meaning you think you both know who's doing it, but we've never actually agreed. And so when you have implicit expectations, meaning it's just implied, you're doing this or I'm doing that, we can move to a place where we have secret resentment. Like, we never agreed to share the COO role. I just, as the wife, am just secretly pissed off that we're not splitting this 50-50 and that you're not figuring out half of the travel. You're not figuring out 50% of the meals. You're not figuring out husband or spouse. So when we created very explicit agreements around who is leading these initiatives in our family, it took the tension away because I wasn't pissed anymore. I was like, I do being the COO. I like being in charge. I like knowing where everybody is and everything is. I like picking what we eat for dinner most of the time. I like helping the girls pack their lunches, except for when I'm tired and a little mad, and then I take it out on my husband for not helping. But that's not that helpful because in my work life, I don't get mad when somebody doesn't help me with the thing that is my job.
Right.
But at home, I get mad for people not helping me with things that is my job. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
So that construct of who's the CEO or do you share the roles? Because you can do that. But if you're going to share them, you also have to have really explicit agreements around that. So let me explain this. The CEO role, I would say my husband and I share, which needs to be constantly calibrated. So every quarter, we have a planning meeting that we do together. It takes about an hour and a half. We revisit our family's priorities. We revisit where we're headed. We look ahead at what stage or needs are coming and how do we prepare well for those things. Because then the preparing is my job as a COO. So for instance, do you have any kids in travel sports?
Oh,
So there's a very different cadence to the household. If you have kids in travel sports, if you're in season or season, the capacity of, do we need to drive them? Are you going to be gone 12 out of 24 weekends? All the bananas that comes with it. So that we don't get smacked in the face by a travel season that's coming. We can both look ahead and say, hey, what's coming? Let's look at the tournament weekends. Who's going to which one? When do we need grandparents to cover? When do we need to have a sitter? I can get all that figured out ahead of time because I can see what's coming. And so as a COO, I can feel super on top of my job. And those planning meetings, when we sit in that CEO role together and look ahead, really helps us make sure that we're prioritizing together. Because then I can look at it and say, hey, there's 2 tournaments where neither one of us can go. So how are we going to cover that? What are we going to do? Or maybe there's 2 weeks of practice that I can't drive to. As a CFO, my husband can say, why don't we pay someone to get that done so that you can have those hours back? Like we're all working together. The 3 of us, I have in air quotes, our 3 roles of CEO, CFO, and COO. So that quarterly planning meeting really helps us stay aligned. So I guess getting to your specific question about my morning wind up and evening wind down. As the COO, again, looking to my business for cues on how do I scale a family and how do I scale my own capacity? Because we talk about that all the time in our business lives. What are you going to outsource? Who are you going to hire? What don't you want to do anymore? How do you put a system in place? How do you use technology to make it go faster? In our business lives, we think about those words all the time. But in our personal lives, we just add more, do more, try to go faster, put more tasks, and like text a little faster, and it doesn't work. So my observation from my professional life was whenever there's something that happens all the time, we put a system in place. And we decide it once and we do it always. For instance, like invoicing. My financial person at the office does not send out an invoice every single time somebody texts her or emails her that an invoice needs to go out. There's a system. Twice a month, it happens in a batch way. We have a system for exactly who's going to review it. It happens super efficiently, and there's hardly any capacity required from my company to get invoices out because it happens on the pretty much the same day every single month. There's a very efficient way around doing it, and it just happens. It's not a big brouhaha. So I was looking at the things in my family and said, what are the things that I want to have happen automatically that would just make life a little simpler? One of them for me, and I've got a bunch of these, but one of them is this morning wind up and evening wind down. So I was noticing 2 things. One, I hate waking up in the morning and walking out into our like kitchen, living, dining room area and seeing a mess. I hate it. It starts me in a tasky way. I need to put the cereal bowl away. I need to pick up this toy. I need to move these shoes. And I hate that I don't have 10 minutes of mental peace. I'm personally super affected by a bunch of visual clutter. I don't like it. And so I didn't like that it started me with this anxiety moment of, wow, there's crap. I hated that. And I was like, if you look at a restaurant, if you walk by a restaurant in the middle of the night and the tables are all set, the chairs are ready, the floor is swept, it is ready for tomorrow. It's ready for the next day's service. What if we thought about our household that same way? And every night we did a wind down where there was a very specific list of things that the family helped me with. And the next morning fresh, and I say, I don't want to see yesterday. So it's wipe down the counters, take out the kitchen trash, start the dishwasher, sweep the floor, take out the bathroom trash too, because I don't like that's gross. And the counters have nothing on them. So we have this really quick wind down. It takes about 10 minutes for everybody to help. It's 3 songs on Alexa. And after dinner, we just run this process so that the household, kind of that main living area, gets shut down. So that's the wind down. The morning wind up, you can decide what goes where, is much shorter for us because, let me start with my observation. My observation was when the girls could leave the house in a way that felt peaceful, organized, and like on top of things, that it just sent them out the door with a better place to start the day mentally. We weren't like, oh crap, we didn't pack lunches. Oh crap, we forgot this little thing that I need to sign. Oh crap. That, again, like anxiety rush for them was not helpful to anyone sending them out the door. And so the morning wind up is like, what is the short checklist of things that you want to make sure happen so that your kids are sent out the door feeling on top of things? So for me, it's refill their water bottles. I know who needs a snack in their bag, pulling lunches out of the fridge, making a little note maybe for 1 or 2 of them. It's this little checklist of what needs to happen so that when they leave the door, I know I did everything and I know that I'm supporting them with a fresh start. It sounds complicated because it's taken me a couple minutes to describe it, but it happens automatically now in our home. And it started with me drawing awareness to everyone in the family of, hey, here's my observations. Here's a checklist on the fridge of what I'm asking for your help with. Again, making it explicit. And let's all check in 2 weeks and see if it feels better to all of us. And see if we want to commit to keep going. So that's a longer answer than you maybe wanted, but gives you context for why it's important.
I love that. So you just saw that there was this need to almost treat your family life a little bit more like a business, like getting very clear with that communication on like expectations, how this can be a well-oiled machine. So there's more peace, there's more organization, there's that calm. Yeah, it just works well. And so you found that morning roundup and that evening wind down really helped your family run better.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
I love that. That's wonderful. And what about when you have those discussions, like maybe something needs to change? What if people are not agreeing? Whether that's with you and your husband, or maybe it's with the different agreements for the daily wind up or wind down. What do you do then?
Yeah, I think there's kind of 2 levels. One, just the family support. So we have a weekly family meeting, which is another thing that I really encourage families to do. And it has really 3 purposes. One is for connection, one is for calendaring, and one is for like to-dos and issues. So the connection, like my husband will often go around and be like, here's a question prompt and everybody should answer it. So ours always happen on Sundays. We bought a new home and we're working on a renovation. And my husband said, what room are you guys most excited about in our new house? And so everybody went around and answered the question. Or it could be we play a quick game of Uno or say a compliment to the person on your right. It just gives our family a chance to engage really intentionally because many modern families were running in a lot of directions. So it gives us a chance to connect. And then I go through the calendar. And so everybody's sitting there and I go through each day of the week and outline, here's what I have on my calendar, who's at practice, who needs picked up, who needs dinner brought to the high school, like all these kinds of things. And I ask them, am I missing anything? And sometimes I am. And so great. And I get it added because one of my also rules is no same day solving. I'm very busy. I like to be very busy. My schedule doesn't have a lot of room for emergency mom texts. And so this is the time where my daughters have a chance to say, here's what I need from you. And I will work very hard to get it to happen for them if they've given it to me in advance. But if you text me 30 minutes before you need something, there is like a 0.01 chance I'm going to be able to make that happen for you. And so it's taught my girls to have that executive capacity to be able to look forward and see what am I going to need so that they can get that request in on Sundays. The issue solving is things like what you're talking about, where they're like, hey, mom, I have this chore or this job that you've asked me to do, and I really don't have the capacity to do that right now while I'm in season. My kids are not like overtly defiant, like I just don't want to. But I think we do a good job of helping them understand why we're doing it so that it makes sense to do the thing. So they're not usually super complaining about the things we ask them to do. We don't ask them to do a ton, in part because my older two who are in high school, they're often at the high school for 12 to 14 hours a day. And so they don't have a ton of capacity to do things here at home. But the things we do ask them to do, they understand why it's important. I sometimes ask them to help me watch their little sisters so that I can go get time with a friend or go work out, and they understand why that's important to me staying inside of my own life. I think when my husband and I disagree, it's like fairly normal marital things. You're not always on the same page. But I think in the roles that we play, I don't think there's ever been any real dissension around that. I think we have natural giftings that more clip together. So I haven't dealt with a lot of issues there. I will tell women, if you feel like your husband doesn't want to play any of the roles and you're really asked to play CEO, CFO, and COO, I would ask them, do you literally just want me to do it? Or do you want to review pieces of it? Because knowing that in advance will keep you from running so far ahead and then being like, hey, don't do that. An example in my world right now, our oldest is a junior in high school and we're looking at colleges, and my husband is on the road a lot. And I asked him, I said, hey, I'm feeling some pressure to start getting some college visits on the calendar. I'm feeling some pressure to understand this process and how it works so that we don't wake up and feel super behind. Is this a process you want me to lead? Is this a process you want to participate in? Or is this a process you just want me to own and run with it? And having that clarity about which one he chose, which is mostly for me to run with it, I was like, I'm going to do it differently than you would do it. And that needs to be okay. I understand. So I was like, okay, we're going to launch off and we're going to do this. And not that I don't want his input, but I will just do it differently. He and I will just go about it differently. And so I'm like, when you look at what I'm doing and feel a tiny bit annoyed, you need to remember that this is what we decided. So that I don't feel like, oh my word, I'm running this and all you're doing is sitting on the side telling me what I'm doing wrong. Because it's like full days on campus and that's like a lot of capacity out of my fall to help her through this process. And if I feel like I'm not doing it right, I'm going to be super annoyed. That's an example of a place where I just sought clarity about his involvement that he wanted to have so that we didn't get into a place of disagreement or being frustrated with each other.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So maybe you have different takes on things, but not seeing that as a negative necessarily, just asking questions for that clarity, that getting that buy-in from your partner, from your spouse. So saying, okay, I'm seeing this kind of come up. Like in case of my husband, he's not as future focused as I am. I'm focused on years ahead. And so chances are high that I'd be the one that would bring something up like that. But instead of being resentful about that, just saying, hey, this is on my radar. And like you said, just asking any questions to get that clarity. And then how do you want to go about this? And then going forward with that. Again, that explicit agreement versus just assuming or being resentful, residing in that place. And that ties into a lot of conversations we have in our podcast about communication and improving relationships. Because obviously, this is not just improving life for you and your husband, but also for your girls as well. Tiffany has even more tips in part 2 on how to run your home life like a well-oiled machine. So don't miss it. Stay tuned for that next episode coming right up. Hey, if you're interested in coming on the podcast either as a guest to share some of your expertise that will help others improve their mental health and wellness and life fulfillment, or if you'd like some help and some free coaching, email us at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org and we can make it happen. We'd love to connect. And if you're a little bit sheepish about being on camera, we can also do a coaching call without ever saying your real name or even showing your face. So don't let that deter you. As always, thanks again for sharing all these episodes and leaving us reviews. We'll see you back here for the next episode. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.